fat lady just sang. Sweetheart.
You there?
No, hey.
Go back to Tennessee
no,
too.
What did I tell you?
Go back to Tennessee too.
You can.
We don't want you here.
No,
All your race things. You ain't gonna be there. You ain't gonna be there. Come on. I should have killed you. Everybody knows you're alive.
This is Brenton Tarrant, and he is in court facing 92 charges, including 51 counts of murder, 40 attempted murders, and 1 count of terrorism, all tied to the Christchurch mosque shootings. Authorities say that on March 15, 2019, armed with multiple weapons and a head-mounted camera, the 28-year-old Australian made his way to Al Noor Mosque in Christchurch, New Zealand. On his way, he began to live stream to make sure the public got in on his planned attack.
They did confirm that it seems that a video of one of the shootings at least had been distributed live, was broadcast live, streamed live on social media.
Before the attack, Tarrant had already sent out a 74-page manifesto to dozens of people, including the New Zealand Prime Minister. In the manifesto, he detailed his white supremacist ideology and anti-Muslim rhetorics. Once he had successfully gotten inside the mosque, Tarrant opened fire on the unsuspecting worshippers who came for their Friday prayers.
A gunman with an automatic weapon has opened fire on a mosque in central Christchurch. We are on standby for a statement from the Prime Minister at 4 o'clock. There are unconfirmed reports as many as 27 people are dead, including children. We must stress those numbers are unconfirmed, just reports at this stage.
Rewind the tape and you can hear that shots have already been fired. Yet the sound from inside the mosque is muffled. People walk by, but their calm is soon shattered. There's panic.
In just over 2 minutes, he fired 144 rounds, leaving only to reload and then returning to finish off the wounded. Among the dead that day was a 3-year-old boy shot and killed. Reports say Mukad ran towards the gunman, probably believing this incident was a play and was gunned down. But the nightmare was far from over. After this attack, Tarrant then drove to a second mosque, Linwood Islamic Center, and carried out another attack, killing 7 more. On his way to a third location, police officers rammed his vehicle and intercepted and arrested him.
Police arrested 28-year-old Australian Brenton Tarrant 36 minutes after the shootings began.
In total, 51 people were killed and 40 more were injured from his attack, leaving behind a trail of heartbroken and grieving families and loved ones.
And so the funerals continue, including that of the first man to die, a 71-year-old Afghan refugee who'd greeted the killer at the doors of the mosque with the words, "Welcome, brother." The guns used that day will be outlawed.
In court, prosecutors told the jury that this was a deliberate attack. Tarrant had carefully planned his attack days ahead to make sure he inflicted maximum casualties. He had even scouted out the mosques beforehand to analyze possible entrance and exit routes. During victim impact statements, relatives and survivors all came to court to confront the killer who had torn their lives apart.
You hurt my father, but you never took him away from me. What I mean by this is that you physically hurt him, but you gifted my father with becoming a martyr, and he has now returned to Allah.
The judge also had this to say to Tarrant before sentencing.
Each murder was the product of calculated and lengthy planning and was committed with a high level of cruelty and callousness. Some of your victims were children. Your act of terrorism resulted in the murder of 51 people and the serious wounding of 40 more. You shot people in the back and ignored the pleas of the wounded to be spared. You advanced on them, stood over them, and viciously took their lives.
Tarrant was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. It was the first time in New Zealand's history such a sentence was handed down.
On each of the 51 charges of murder, charges 1 to 51, You were sentenced to life imprisonment. I order that you serve the sentences without parole. On each of the 40 charges of attempted murder, charges 52 to 91, you were sentenced to concurrent terms of 12 years in prison.
Tarrant stood in court completely emotionless as he received the sentence.
On the charge of committing a terrorist act, charge 92, you were sentenced to life imprisonment.
Outside the courtroom, families and relatives of the victims, survivors, and supporters celebrated the judgment.
He tried to look as strong as he can. He tried to look like he doesn't care. And I'm very sure that he was so much screaming and crying inside him.
Brenton Tarrant showed no emotion as the heaviest sentence in New Zealand's history was read out loud. But Fraser Glenn Cross turned his trial into a one-man circus of hatred, screaming until the final sentence.
I think the fat lady just sang. Seat high.
This is Fraser Glenn Cross, and he is in court facing multiple murder charges, attempted murder, and hate crime offenses after one of the most racially motivated killing sprees in Kansas state history. It was April 13, 2014, the day before the Jewish holiday of Passover, when the 73-year-old white supremacist armed himself and drove to the Jewish Community Center in Overland Park. There, in broad daylight, he opened fire in the parking lot. His first victims were 69-year-old William Corporon and his 14-year-old grandson, Reet Underwood. Both of them were at the center to watch a youth talent show. Moments later after this attack, Cross drove to Village Shalom, a nearby Jewish retirement facility. There, he shot and killed 53-year-old Terry Lamano, who was visiting her mother. In all, 3 lives were taken, but that didn't matter to Cross.
He's charged with capital murder, which is the most serious crime that you can be charged with in the state of Kansas. It has the most serious penalty you can give, which is the potential of the death penalty.
Authorities made it clear the motive was pure hate. Cross had been on the FBI's radar for decades. A former leader in the Ku Klux Klan and an open neo-Nazi, he had long expressed his desire to rid America of Jews and minorities. Even after his arrest, he was defiant. Dashcam footage captured him in the back of a police cruiser in a celebrative mood.
Officer to bring him some whiskey out of his car.
In court, he fired his legal team and insisted on representing himself. That decision alone would turn the trial into a showcase of rage, conspiracy theories, and racist outbursts. First, Cross claimed his actions were not criminal, but a kind of patriotic mission to protect the white race.
Prove my criminal intent. I submit that I had no criminal intent. I had a patriotic intent to stop the genocide against my people.
Prosecutors responded to this claim with hours of evidence showing careful premeditation from the timing of the attack to the targets chosen.
Inside that Suzuki were 2 shotguns, a .38 caliber revolver, a .30 caliber carbine rifle, numerous rounds of ammunition for all 4 of those weapons. And the defendant, whose sole mission was to find and kill as many Jewish people as possible.
Audio recordings of Cross's own words were played for the jury. They heard his violent rants, his admiration for Adolf Hitler, and his wish to inspire a race war. Throughout the trial, Cross interrupted the court, made threats, and hurled slurs, even with the victims' grieving families in the room.
I'll just get the hell out of here, go back to my cell, and wait for phase 2 if you're not going to give me a fair trial. You won't even answer a simple question. What the hell am I with you?
Miller, this is your warning, sir. If you're going to proceed in this manner, you will be removed from the court.
What manner? Be specific. What the hell are you talking about?
The jury went out and they returned with a verdict, guilty on all counts. They also recommended that he got the death penalty for his actions. The families of his victims also took to the stand to address the court.
My childhood in a split second. Any sense of normalcy was erased by an act of horrid hatred that will haunt me for the rest of my life.
The last words I said to Bill were, "And you have the most important job." He said, "I know."
And then came the sentence. Fraser Glenn Cross was sentenced to death by lethal injection. Still, he remained unrepentant.
Fat lady just sang. sweetheart.
But Cross never made it to the execution chamber. He died of natural causes while on death row on May 3, 2021, at the age of 80. Cross shouted through his sentencing and laughed on camera after the murders, but Anders Breivik was not remorseful for his actions, even after sentencing. This is Anders Breivik, and he is in court facing charges for the deadliest single-person mass killing in modern history. On July 22, 2011, Breivik parked a white van outside the Prime Minister's office in Oslo, Norway. Inside the vehicle was a rifle and a bomb, which he had spent time preparing. He then walked away from the vehicle, dressed as a military officer. Moments later, the explosion tore through the government quarter, killing 8 and injuring over 200 others. But that was only part of his plan.
He admits the huge bomb in Oslo.
In his mind, the moment he puts on those black military clothes and gets in the car and decides to do it, that's his moment of transformation from Breivik the failure to Breivik the warrior.
While the city was left in chaos, Breivik drove 40 kilometers to the island of Utoya, where teenagers were having a youth summer camp. Still wearing the officer uniform, he arrived at the camp's dock and calmly opened fire on the unsuspecting campers. For over an hour, Breivik hunted the children on the island. Some of them were shot while hiding under beds, others killed as they tried to swim away. 69 people were murdered, most of them teenagers.
But there's no denying the horror Breivik sowed across Norway last summer.
In total, 77 people lost their lives that day, while hundreds more were left physically injured and traumatized. A 1,500-page manifesto posted online revealed that Breivik's motive was a radical opposition to multiculturalism and immigration. He wanted to start a war. After he was done with the attacks, Breivik called the police himself to surrender.
Kommandør Anders Behring Breivik I den norske antikommunistiske motstandsbevegelsen. Jeg er på Utøya for øyeblikket. Jeg ønsker å overgi meg. Ok. Hvilket nummer ringer du fra? Jeg ringer fra mobil.
During the trial, Breivik refused to recognize the authority of the court.
This morning, then offered the waiting media some kind of salute.
He pleaded not guilty, claiming the killings were an act of self-defense against Islam and cultural Marxism.
I acknowledge the acts, but I do not plead guilty, and I claim that I was doing it in self-defense.
He was calm, deliberate, and unrepentant throughout the proceedings. The judge found him criminally responsible and sentenced him to 21 years of preventive detention, the maximum under Norwegian law, with the possibility of indefinite extension. To this day, Breivik has shown no remorse. In a recent appeal hearing, he still threw a Nazi salute as he entered the court for the hearing. But while Breivik's massacre sent shockwaves across Europe, what happens when a terror cell storms a concert venue and slaughters civilians by the hundreds? This is Frank James, and he is facing federal charges of terrorism and violence committed in a mass transit system. On April 12, 2022, during New York's morning rush hour, the 62-year-old entered a Brooklyn subway car disguised as a construction worker.
I'm on my way to Philadelphia.
Wearing a neon vest and gas mask, James ignited 2 smoke bombs, then opened fire. Commuters were trapped in the train, unable to see or flee, and screams filled the car as bullets tore through the thick smoke.
James is the lone suspect in the Brooklyn subway attack that left 10 people shot and 19 others injured. Luckily, no one was killed, but some now have a long road to recovery.
In total, 10 people were shot. Dozens more suffered injuries while trying to escape. But miraculously, no one died. James fled the scene and evaded capture for 36 hours. Then, in a surprising twist, he called police himself and turned himself in near a McDonald's in the East Village.
After an intense 30-hour manhunt, the suspect who allegedly opened fire on a crowded subway train in New York City is behind bars. 62-year-old Frank James was arrested this afternoon in Manhattan's Lower East Side.
Authorities found disturbing videos he'd posted online days earlier on his YouTube channel, ranting about violence and the legal system.
Our black sister Supreme Court Justice, power to the people, is married to a white man.
They also recovered numerous pieces of evidence linking James to the crime at the scene.
First, 2 bags were found at the scene. One contained a firearm registered to James, a U-Haul key, and multiple bank cards with the name Frank James. A second contained fireworks filled with black powder. Then there was the U-Haul found 5 miles from the scene that records show James rented here in Philadelphia. According to authorities, they've gathered images of James riding the U-Haul into Brooklyn yesterday morning.
In court, James pleaded guilty and apologized to his victims.
64-year-old Frank James apologized to the victims. They in no way deserve to have what happened to them, he said, explaining that what he did was to draw attention to mental health services he received over the years that he felt were inadequate. His attorney had asked for a sentence of 18 years, noting James' age, physical health issues, and his mental illness.
But the judge had a different outlook on the situation.
The judge wasn't having it, telling James that what he did cannot be excused or explained away with mental illness.
He was sentenced to 10 life sentences, one for each victim shot in the subway that morning.
New tonight, the man responsible for the mass shooting in a subway car last year will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Frank James sentenced today for opening fire during the morning rush in Brooklyn.
Frank James expressed remorse in court, but Ahmad Rahimi didn't blink or show any hint of regret even after he was sentenced.
The perpetrator was not remorseful at all.
This is Ahmad Khan Rahimi, and he is in court facing federal charges for a string of bombings that terrorized the New York metropolitan area in September 2016. It began on the morning of September 17th, when a pipe bomb exploded inside a trash can near a U.S. Marine Corps charity run in Seaside Park, New Jersey. No one was hurt, but that wasn't luck, because the race had been delayed. If the runners had passed just minutes earlier, it could have been a massacre. That same night, panic gripped the Chelsea neighborhood in Manhattan. A pressure cooker bomb packed with metal BBs and ball bearings exploded on a crowded street. 31 people were injured. A second device was found just a few blocks away, but luckily, it never went off.
2 pressure cookers detonated in Chelsea back on September 17, 2016, that left 30 people injured. A pipe bomb device left at the scene of the Seaside Semper 5 charity race in New Jersey did not explode.
Investigators would later discover that Rahimi had planted multiple devices throughout New York and New Jersey, some of which failed to detonate and were safely dismantled by the bomb squad. Surveillance footage caught him calmly towing 2 suitcases, each packed with explosives, through the streets, planting them with ease. Footage showed him spending hours in a Home Depot aisle, buying the exact materials later used to construct the bombs. By now, a multi-agency manhunt was underway. Police finally found Rahimi sleeping outside a bar in Linden, New Jersey. When officers approached and asked his name, Rahimi responded by pulling a gun from his hoodie and opening fire. A shootout followed and dozens of rounds were exchanged, with Rahimi struck multiple times before being taken into custody alive.
That's definitely him.
He was later arraigned from a hospital bed, hooked up to machines, pleading not guilty to 4 federal charges: using weapons of mass destruction, bombing a public space, property destruction using explosives, and using a destructive device during a violent crime. But the evidence was overwhelming. Prosecutors laid out a detailed timeline, physical evidence, video surveillance, and forensic links that painted a clear picture of calculated domestic terrorism. The jury agreed. Rahimi was found guilty on all counts. Ahmad Rahimi was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. His victims and survivors who hoped for a show of remorse were severely disappointed.
Justice, or feel some kind of way to feel relief, but the perpetrator was not remorseful at all. He definitely spoke about himself. He didn't even care about us. I thought that today was probably a day for us, but it didn't feel like that at all.
Rahimi remained stone-faced as life without parole was handed down, but this 19-year-old defendant remained stone-faced as he received his sentence.
Sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
This is 19-year-old Peyton Gendron, and he is in court facing charges of first-degree murder and a possible life in prison after carrying out one of the deadliest and most racially motivated mass shootings in recent U.S. history. It was May 14, 2022, when Gendron loaded his car with ammunition, strapped on body armor, armed himself with an assault rifle inscribed with white supremacist slogans, and drove over 200 miles from his hometown of Conklin, New York, to Buffalo. But this wasn't a spontaneous act of violence. Prosecutors said it was a calculated mission. Gendron had purposefully driven over 200 miles to a Tops Friendly Markets grocery store located in a predominantly black neighborhood, and his motive was detailed in an explicit 180-page manifesto online Gendron had already published online, outlining his desire to start a race war and kill as many black Americans as possible. At around 2:30 p.m., Gendron pulled into the parking lot and began to live stream the massacre. Armed with a camera and high-capacity magazines, he immediately opened fire on the unsuspecting citizens.
When I first saw him shooting, he shot a woman, he shot a deacon, he shot another woman, and then he went in the store and started shooting again.
10 people were murdered in the span of minutes, while 3 others were injured but survived. Witnesses described a scene of absolute panic. People scrambling for exits, ducking behind shopping carts, and calling loved ones as bullets tore through the aisles.
My granddaughter works there. She heard the shooting, so she took herself and ran in the bathroom and locked the door. I frequent this store all the time. I've never been afraid to be here. I am now.
By the time police arrived, Gendron was preparing to turn the gun on himself. Officers talked him down and arrested him on the spot. Investigators later revealed chilling details. The shooter had mapped the store's layout, rehearsed his entry route, and decorated his weapon with the names of past mass murderers. Every detail had been rehearsed.
It was straight up racially motivated hate crime from somebody outside of our community.
This is the worst nightmare that any community can face.
In court, prosecutors didn't hold back. They called Gendron a domestic terrorist, motivated by pure hatred and emboldened by online radicalization.
On May 14th of 2022, this defendant displayed a callous disregard for human life. He drove over 200 miles out of his way with one mission, with one goal, to kill as many black people as possible. During that 3-hour drive, he could have turned around, but he wouldn't be deterred. He was steadfast to accomplish his goal of killing as many black people as possible and starting a race war.
The courtroom was packed with grieving families. One by one, they stood to give their victim impact statements.
I'm Vion Elliott. I am Andre McNeil's brother. Me and Andre are 11 months and 8 days apart. On the 28th, I'll turn 53. On March 8th, he'll turn 54. Peyton, you took this from me. You took the last of my line.
And at one point, a family member lunged toward Gendron in rage, forcing court officers to intervene. The teenager sat motionless for most of the proceedings. At sentencing, he stood and delivered an apology.
For stealing the lives of your loved ones. I cannot express how much I regret all the decisions I made leading up to my actions on May 14th. I did a terrible thing that day. I shot and killed people because they were black. Looking back now, I can't believe I actually did it. I believed what I read online and acted out of hate.
But nothing could bring back the lives of their loved ones gone, and no amount of remorse could undo that damage because Gendron chose hate.
For you or your ignorant, hateful, and evil ideologies in a civilized society.
Peyton Gendron was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
That you be sentenced to life imprisonment without parole.
Gendron remained emotionless as he learned his fate, but this defendant turned his sentencing into an uproar that got him dragged out of court. This is Jeremy Christian, a 37-year-old man who is standing trial in Multnomah County, Oregon, facing 2 counts of first-degree murder, attempted murder, assault, and a list of hate-driven felonies. According to prosecutors, it all began on May 26, 2017, on a Max Light Rail train in Portland. Christian boarded like any regular passenger, but within moments, it became clear this was anything but routine. He began hurling racist and anti-Muslim slurs at 2 teenage girls, both black, one of them wearing a hijab. Witnesses described the tirade as loud, violent, and terrifying. That's when 3 men, Taliesin Namkai Meche, Ricky Best, and Micah Fletcher stood up to intervene and protect the girls. But Christian had no interest in backing down. If anything, the confrontation turned physical, and right there, on a crowded commuter train, in broad daylight, and in the presence of multiple witnesses, Jeremy Christian did the unthinkable. He pulled out a knife and began stabbing, striking all three men. Ricky Best, a 53-year-old Army veteran and father of 4, died on the train. Taliesin Namkai Meche, just 23 years old, died later at the hospital. Only Micah Fletcher, although critically wounded, somehow survived. After this attack, Christian got off the train calmly, like nothing had happened. But investigators quickly caught up to him, and what they found painted a chilling picture of a man already spiraling. Just one day before the deadly stabbing, Christian had attacked another black woman, Demetria Hester, shouting racial slurs and throwing a glass bottle at her face. She survived and would later face him in court. During the trial, prosecutors portrayed Christian as consumed by hatred, emboldened by his beliefs, and eager to lash out at anyone who challenged him.
Basically just like telling us that because of our religion or because of our color that we don't deserve to be here and that we don't deserve to live.
The defense tried to argue self-defense, that Christian only attacked because he felt threatened when the three men confronted him.
Here's your question. One of your questions. Whether the state has proven at the end of the evidence to you, beyond a reasonable doubt, Mr. Christian's real-time belief was not reasonable, taking into account the circumstances that were present and Mr. Christian's self-preservation instinct.
He was saying Muslims shouldn't go back to Saudi Arabia.
But the jury didn't buy it.
On count 1, the verdict is guilty. That's murder in the first degree.
And then came sentencing. Among the people who came to speak was Demetria Hester, the very woman Christian had attacked the day before the murders.
To Mr. Jeremy Christian, your mom should have swallowed you. You are a waste of breath. And when you die and go to hell, I hope you rot.
Christian exploded.
See you there.
No, hey.
Go back to Tennessee, too.
What do I tell you?
Go back to Tennessee, too.
You can.
We don't want you here. All your race hate. You ain't gonna be there either. You ain't gonna be there either. I should have killed you. Everybody knows you're alive.
Days later, he returned. This time, he was in shackles, but most importantly, he was now silent and sober. And that's when the judge delivered the final sentence. 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 22 years.
2 consecutive life sentences. Those 2 life sentences, he will also serve an additional 26 years in prison. Reporting live outside the courthouse.